want to welcome you to the Ask Jeff YouTube channel. Here's today's question. In John chapter 6, verse 53 and 55, Jesus says that his flesh is real food and his blood is real drink. Unless we eat and drink of it, we have no life in us. How do we reconcile this with the doctrine of sola fide, or faith alone? And how does this not point to transubstantiation? Now, let's begin with the last word. Transubstantiation is the historic Catholic belief that the bread turns into the literal body of Jesus and the wine into his literal blood. And per reference, John 6, 33 through 35, one is literally consuming those items as a means of grace. It's a sacramental theology. Now, let's talk about what was Jesus saying, and more importantly, what was he not? Is our eternal life in his body and in his blood? Absolutely. In fact, if his body was not given, if his blood was not shed, there could not be eternal life because the sacrifice would not have, quote, been given. I think the real answer to this question, though, is actually found in Hebrews chapter 10. You said Hebrews chapter 10. Yeah, it talks about the priests that offer sacrifices every day to essentially no end and no resolve. But Jesus Christ, here's what's important, once and for all made that sacrifice. So there's no need for a repetitive sacrifice, hence transubstantiation. Now, what does this do with John chapter 6? John chapter 6, Jesus is absolutely right. He says that if we do not eat of his body and eat of his blood, then there is no eternal life in us. Fast forward, Matthew chapter 26, what we typically call the Last Supper. Jesus hands out the bread and says, "This is my body." And then he holds up the cup and says, basically, the blood of the new covenant is in here. That wasn't his actual body, and that wasn't actually his blood. What you see in John 6 is the same thing you see in John chapter 10 and John chapter 8, all through the Gospel of John, where Jesus uses this imagery of being a door, being a shepherd, being a pathway toward eternal life and salvation in him. So again, I think when you take these three verses in John 6 and you begin to kind of go outside and look at the context, Jesus was saying without his body and blood, there is no salvation. However, at the Last Supper, I think he made it clear that he did not mean a transubstantiation, literal receiving of his actual body and blood through what you and I know as the Lord's Supper. Great question. If you have one, send to askjeff.net. Maybe your question will be tomorrow's. Thanks for being a part of today's daily question. Now, we answer a question each and every day. Please feel free to submit a new question at askjeff.net. We may not have gotten to yours today, but we eventually will continue to be a part of this. Subscribe so you don't miss out on a question every day.